It is Free Talk Live, and you are welcome to join us, as you always are, because we're here doing this thing 7 nights per week live. That means it is the live Sunday edition. And with you in the studio, as usual, it's Ian.
Richie Rich.
And Mark.
Well, it's happened. Facebook apparently is now calling for regulations, and I just heard about this tonight. We were all
surprise.
The local libertarian meetup that happens weekly here in beautiful Keene, New Hampshire, and one of the guys who was there mentioned that this just hit the news, and sure enough, here's the story from the BBC. Mark Zuckerberg, that is the CEO of Facebook, one of the founders of Facebook,
for those that don't know,
is now demanding that the government or governments get involved in regulating social media.
Because he couldn't do it without him.
Well, yeah, right. Well, he can't regulate the other social media without them, and that's what he wants to do. So back in 1971, I believe, they made broadcast advertising illegal for cigarettes. And the cigarette companies actually had a hand in this. The reason is that they didn't want they didn't want to spend all this money on broadcast, so they all just kind of agreed, hey, let's just make it illegal for all of us, because they could not get, you couldn't get just because somebody would always break weak. If you've got 4 gas stations sitting on the corner, the guy with the lowest price is likely to get the most amount of customers that come to his gas station.
It's hard to form a cartel when someone's always breaking it.
So you get the government to step in and then just make broadcast illegal for cigarettes, and then you've got that. Basically, you got your regulation. There you go. Wham, bam.
Keep your competitors in line.
Right, and then all the health nuts, they're thinking, well, the government's doing us a favor. No, this is the tobacco company didn't want that.
In an op-ed published in the Washington Post, Facebook's chief says the responsibility for monitoring harmful content, and I would pull the Post's his editorial or whatever, op-ed, I'd pull it up, but Washington Post wants money out of me, so we'll just go with the BBC summary of this. Anyway, he says the responsibility for monitoring harmful content is too great for firms alone. That's right. The billions of dollars that Facebook brings in revenue every single year or whatever it is. I don't know what the amounts are, but it's large. They have billions of users, as I understand it. Apparently, that's not good enough. We need the government to get involved and help them out.
How is that going to help? Because even a few weeks ago with the New Zealand shooting, they had trouble keeping the videos offline. And now if the government mandates, some sort of censorship, how are they miraculously going to be able to keep censored content offline?
No.
Or now they just got to
the government doesn't actually. I mean, Facebook has to do all the work anyway.
They don't help anything.
This isn't about Facebook monitoring Facebook. This is about Facebook monitoring the other social media. He doesn't want to lose his
regulating,
position.
Not monitoring. He wants them controlled, and so maybe they would add some government paperwork to all the processes and make it even more difficult.
Right. Everybody's always predicting the demise of Facebook. Right. Friendster and MySpace and
Well,
so
nothing
Facebook's
stays on top forever.
Yeah, it's almost inevitable. Just the long.
You know
time
what
frame.
does?
What?
The government?
Once it's regulated,
Goon Squad?
Once it's regulated, then you have a much better chance of staying on top because
too big to fail.
Right. Facebook wants to remain too big to fail.
Well, and again, there are some people on both the left and the far right that have been calling for Facebook's regulation as a public utility, that they want it to be considered a thing that you have a right to, instead of it being just a business that is running a website that can decide its rules.
Yeah, I really don't like Facebook's rules. I've got to say that. I mean, the way that Facebook handles information and stuff, it bothers me.
Well, but making them into a utility isn't going to make that any better.
Once the government's involved, it's not going to get any better.
Well, there's members in the tech community that want that done for the entire internet as a whole, because it's so ubiquitous.
To turn the internet into a utility?
Into a utility, yeah, like the phone service or cable service, so that it is then there for all. And they think that it will remove the last mile problem getting it out to rural areas, because now as a utility, the government has to provide that service to people out there.
Great. So make it so everybody else has to subsidize all the people who decided they wanted to live out in the middle of the woods.
Exactly.
So he calls for new laws in 4 areas: harmful content, election integrity, privacy, and data portability. It comes 2 weeks after a gunman used the site to live stream his attack on a mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand, which we covered extensively here. Zuckerberg wrote, quote, "Lawmakers often tell me we have too much power over speech, and frankly, I agree." Adding that Facebook was, quote, "creating an independent body so people can appeal our decisions about what is posted and what is taken down."
An ombudsman.
He also describes a new set of rules he would like to see enforced on tech companies. These new regulations should be the same for all websites, he says, so that it's easier to stop the, quote, "harmful content."
Equality for all.
From spreading quickly across platforms. So what does he want? Asks the BBC. In brief, Zuckerberg calls for the following things. Point. Common rules that all social media sites need to adhere to.
140 characters.
That he will then
That he'll write.
Right.
Enforced by third-party bodies, which I presume means the government, to control the spread of harmful content. And again, who decides what harmful content is?
Sounds like censorship across the board.
Yeah, it does sound like that, doesn't it? Another point. All major tech companies to release a transparency report every 3 months to put it on par with financial reporting. So generate more paperwork.
Right.
Hire more people to generate more paperwork. Oh, what's that? You can't afford it because you're a small upstart company? I guess you just can't be social media. You can't be social media. Stronger laws around the world too. Well, now that's an interesting. Before we go on here, Mark, you brought up Steemit, and a lot of listeners don't know what that is because it doesn't have the name recognition of Facebook. But it is basically a decentralized social media platform that is blockchain based, essentially. Sure. And
I use it occasionally.
I still use it, on occasion, and it's good at what it does. It's just, it's not Facebook size, right? Sure. Like it's not to that size. And Steemit, I suspect, isn't organized in the United States, or at least it doesn't have to be. So, I would hope that Steemit wouldn't be following whatever these rules are. If the federal government comes down with these regulations, I would hope that they would just say, "What are you going to do about it?"
Like the Pirate Bay.
Yeah, we're going to do whatever we want. It's blockchain, baby. You can't target us.
Yeah, how would that work for decentralized social media, right? Because if they
could target the Steemit.com website, because that to some extent has a central location.
That's just a domain, though.
But that's just one of what could be many domains that can tap into the same blockchain.
Yeah.
So
even what is the Twitter clone or
Mastodon?
Mastodon. Yeah. Even that, right? There's more than one branch of Mastodon that you could use and aggregate the same content.
Yeah.
So even if they go after Mastodon, right, kind of like a Hydra,
they can't go after Mastodon. There's thousands of Mastodon.
But now
servers.
there's going to be rules
and
regulations.
Zuckerberg! Eat it!
But these rules and regulations cover Mastodon.
In theory, they would. Yeah. And of course, the Mastodon creators are based in Europe, so they probably would obey this stuff. But who knows? They do seem to be pretty dedicated to decentralization, so maybe they wouldn't. Let's go on. More with what he is demanding here from the governments. He says he wants stronger laws around the world to protect the integrity of elections, with common standards for all websites to identify political actors.
I still don't understand. Can somebody call in and tell me exactly what the Russians did to hack the United States election? I mean,
they bought some ads, allegedly.
Bought ads on Facebook. That's what I think they did.
That's
bought some ads on Facebook, right?
That's not hacking.
Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. Are you telling me that the Russians cannot, like the Russian government isn't allowed to buy ads that talk about the United States? Can they buy ads about anything?
Well,
foreign entities aren't supposed to contribute finances to U.S. politics.
That's not contributing.
That's just buying advertising.
True.
And what the issue, of course, is with Facebook. So there's nothing illegal about Russian people or Russian governments or whatever buying. Of course, governments are just people, but Russian people buying advertising to support one candidate or another.
It's social engineering.
But it may be illegal for Facebook to accept it. I'm not sure, what all the rules are as far as FEC regulations.
I didn't realize this was an infringement on my liberties, but you're telling me then that I cannot buy ads for a particular Russian candidate that appear on Facebook in Russia, whatever the social media is.
I don't know what the rules are in Russia, so I wouldn't tell you that. But
I guess.
This is Free Talk Live. You can bring up whatever you want here. 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. Joining you tonight, it's Ian.
Richie Rich.
And Mark.
Hey, don't forget, you can catch us over on our Twitch channel, over at twitch.lrn.fm. Things got a little interesting last night toward the end of the show, where we thought we had a female caller who was like a big star on Twitch. She has 3 million followers on Twitch, which is a video game
exciting.
Yeah, video game streaming platform. But it turns out she was actually not that person. She was an imposter, somebody who was masquerading as though she were this Twitch star. And then we were actually, the Discord server was what I would call raided by this group of very nasty individuals who she appeared to have been involved with encouraging them to show up.
But wasn't nasty at all.
She was very nice, but her associates were not so nice. So we had to set a lot of people into the toxic category last night.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
You can look, kids. You can play around here, but you gotta go to go
to the dungeon with James.
Right, hang out there.
Her call was on par with Cobra Commander from back in the day. Like those.
No, hell no,
good
way.
Crank calls.
She wasn't. She wasn't.
I mean, she was.
She was just calling about K-pop. That wasn't a crank call. That wasn't a character. I mean, she was impersonating the person.
Yeah.
But she was just impersonating a Twitch.
Right.
Twitch
Nobody
chick.
knows who that is. Everybody knows who Cobra Commander is.
Right.
Cobra.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, some people know who this young lady, Pokimane, was her name. I mean, she's 3 million people. She got 3 million followers. That's nothing to shake a stick at, right? Like, that's pretty impressive.
Sure, but she's Twitch famous. That's different.
But that's the kind of person who will get recognized in the streets. Like, she has enough followers. A lot of these YouTubers with 1 million plus followers, like some of the pranksters, like Vitaly ZDTV, he can't prank as easily because he's so well known. Because people know who he is. Even though he's got 1 million subscribers, probably millions more have seen his videos at some point.
It's like Tom Green and Sacha Baron Cohen as soon as they got popular.
So head on over to our Twitch channel at twitch.lrn.fm. You can follow us there, and then do us a favor, share out the fact that you're watching our Twitch on your social media, so that will hopefully get some more eyes and ears on the ideas of freedom. As we continue here talking about somebody who does not care about freedom, his name's Mark Zuckerberg. He is the CEO of Facebook, and in a recent op-ed for the Washington Post, he calls for regulation of social media. And in fact, and again, I have not read his actual statement, but there's a lot of summaries of it here, so this is from the BBC. He says he wants stronger laws around the world to protect the integrity of elections with common standards for all websites. Now, does that mean all websites or all social media websites?
Well, I'm sure it's any website that he can have regulated.
Right. So this may be extending beyond just his competitors.
Well, I can hear Zuckerberg's frustration here. Look. Somebody bought some ads. That's what we do. We sell ads. If
you're our product, we sell you as.
If somebody called me and said, "Mark, I want to buy. Mark, I wish to buy some ads."
I think that's like Transylvanian.
Fine. The Transylvanian wing of the KGB. He calls in and says he wants to buy some ads, and he has some a little bit of an accent. You know what I mean? And like, what would I know? All right, you could buy some ads.
Can I pay in rubles?
No, you can pay in crypto. So I'm sure that they would have that the Russian government would have the ability to spend some of that sweet cheddar that they earn on RT to.
But if you put the ad on the air,
right,
and that's the violation.
That's my job, is to put the ad on the air. If it's for a political candidate, am I supposed to vet this person? Oh, he had an accent? That's what that's what this is all about?
Well, they're saying they want all websites, or Zuckerberg says he wants the government to force all websites to, quote, identify political actors. It's a quote from the BBC. I don't know if he wrote that exactly, but...
Identify how?
Well, so example would be RT's channel now on YouTube. When you go to RT, which stands for Russia Today, there's a little byline beneath the video window that says something like, this channel's funded by the Russian government.
Oh, okay.
And there are other channels that have subsequently been identified as oh, this is a the BBC. I don't know if it's applying to BBC, but it should be there as well, you would think.
Right.
So
BBC is definitely a foreign actor.
Right. So that's what they're talking about here. And then how would that work on Facebook? Maybe they would be required to show beneath an advertisement that this advertisement was placed by the Russian government or something like that.
So the Russian government buys a U.S. subsidy company to run the ads through.
That's how you do it, right?
Just kick the can down the road a little further.
Laws here. So this is more from the laundry list, the summary the BBC has provided of what it is that Zuckerberg wants from politicians, from the government goons. He says he also wants laws that not only apply to candidates and elections, but also other, quote, divisive political issues, unquote, and for laws to apply outside of official campaign periods. So basically expand campaign advertising regulations to all the time, even if there's not a campaign.
Well, there is
going on.
The thing is that
there's
somebody's
always a campaign.
Always running for president.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the one that everybody's worried about.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. I just seen a story that said I think this campaign cycle is going to have more primaries held before the year 2020 than any time else in the past. So they're even opening up the campaign window further than it's ever been in the past.
That's true, because every time a state sets an earlier primary, New Hampshire always has to set its before that state. It's statutorily mandated in New Hampshire that New Hampshire be the first primary.
Right. We don't care whether everybody's warned that the primary is coming. We care whether our primary's first.
See, and I never understood how that would work if another state passed the same statute. Yeah. Then you're a race to what? How early can you actually have it?
The Secretary of State keeps on getting reappointed based almost entirely on this reality. I mean, that's what his thing is that he's going to make sure that New Hampshire's first. And so everybody's like, well, we don't like this guy, but
he has our back.
So he also wants new industry-wide standards to control how political campaigns use data to target voters online, which means that he gets to write the standards that will then be forced on his competition.
He's also got immediate knowledge of how that works, because that's how Facebook targets ads anyway.
More countries, he says he wants to adopt privacy laws like the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, which came into force last year and has been one of the most annoying things to ever happen to the internet.
Did you know this website accepts cookies?
Right. Every damn site with these cookies notifications. The reason why you see that, folks, is because of the GDPR, this European regulation that mandated this behavior of websites. And so most website operators are just like, well, we know it's only mandated in Europe, but we'll just apply it to the whole world.
It's the same as the catalytic converter in California. But basically, once it's mandated in a large enough market, then you just got to do it for everybody.
And some of them are so invasive to where when you go to a site, it'll pop it up and like blur the rest of the site, so you can't do anything until you click past the cookies notice.
Even worse on mobile.
It's basically an extra click to get into every website of the world. They've just wasted everyone's time with extra clicking because of this. So this is what Zuckerberg says. We need all around the world. Everyone should be doing this. 855-450-FREE, and there's more of his demands coming up. This is Free Talk Live.
Bitcoin.com wants you to know about SaveItPurse.com. Since launching in 2014, over 200,000 users have saved an average of 15% for a combined $4 million using Bitcoin, or BTC. And now you can use Bitcoin Cash, BCH, to fund your account. You can save between 5 to 33% on things you're going to buy anyway when you shop using SaveItPurse.com. Add items to your cart, fund your account, select your discount, and save. SaveItPurse.com. Save ATPurse.com.
It's Free Talk Live Sunday edition of the show. You dial toll free. Join us here. Our number is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. Tonight, it's Ian,
Richard Rich,
and Mark.
Bitcoin.com is your premier source for everything Bitcoin related, whether it's the latest news headlines or engaging with the community on their Bitcoin forum. You can do all those things and more, like choosing a Bitcoin wallet, buy some Bitcoin, and find out where you can spend your Bitcoin over at Bitcoin.com. They've also got the Bitcoin.com Academy. For those of you who are brand new to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, you can get started there. over at Bitcoin.com.
They've got games over there, too. You can play games with your Bitcoin.
That's right. And maybe we'll talk more about that coming up in future episodes.
They're actually revamping that portion, too. They'll be be more robust, more games to play.
All right, cool. Looking forward to announcing that once it's ready. As we continue, we'll take your calls and thoughts. And then more of what Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, would like to bring to every other social media platform by force. We'll get into that coming up here. Your calls and thoughts. Welcome. Let's talk to Robbie, calling us from New Hampshire and watching on YouTube. Go ahead, Robbie.
Hi, Robbie.
You're Robbie. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Robbie. Robbie, Richie Rich.
LRN.FM.
Bye-bye. Toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. Threats are not allowed here on Free Talk Live. And since the police departments aren't doing anything about it, we'll just hit the dump button. Yeah, problem solved. Let's continue. This person is Tom in New Hampshire. Tom, you're on Free Talk Live, listening online. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, there's one issue about the suicide prevention business, if you call it whatever, that is a violation of the non-aggression principle. And
the suicide prevention business?
Yeah, whatever you call it. The bureaucrats, the suicide prevention technique, there is one facet of that.
I'm not sure I understand. Hold on, before you go on, are you talking about like a hotline? Somebody running a hotline? What else are we talking about?
Or the first responders.
So police.
Yeah, there's one of the things that is a clear violation of the non-aggression principle, and that is when they physically force people into a vehicle and bring them to a hospital or a mental institution for an evaluation, and then in some cases they get drugged against their will, and these are clear violations of the non-aggression principle.
Yeah, I think that this is a difficult one, Tom, because when you're talking about mental health, sometimes it seems like people need to violate the non-aggression principle to handle mental health issues. Sometimes people aren't in their right minds. I don't really know how to handle that one in particular, but I can tell you I've been in a situation where a crazy person was around and they had a gun and they needed to be handled. And we did our very best to handle the situation, but at some point, if that had gone on for, if it goes on for many, many, many days, then why should I be handling it? At some point or another, just turn it over to somebody else. I'm sick of it.
What I'm getting at, though, is I went to a presentation at the high school recently, and most of it was pretty good stuff about how to deal with the underlying issues, and they spoke of the importance of having an open and honest conversation. But then at the end of the discussion period, I also brought up, what about if the person is 18 and refuses to go to the hospital, and they call it implied consent, which is an outrageous name when somebody is screaming, let me go, kicking and screaming, let me go, that they are somehow implying that they're consenting. But I came up with a different approach this time, and I'd like to share it with everybody, and that is, I said, well, on 7 February 1985, DEA Special Agent Enrique Camarena was kidnapped outside the United States Consulate in Guadalajara, Jalisco. 5 goons jumped him. They grabbed him, forced him into a vehicle, and took him to a house where he was held against his will, and they tortured him to death for 2 days, during which time he became unconscious, and they didn't want him to end his suffering just yet by dying, so they had a doctor drug him to bring him back so they could torture him even longer and make him suffer even longer.
Sure.
Wow.
And if you wonder who could possibly be so wicked, just look at standard procedure here when somebody is suspected of this Orwellian thought crime called suicide ideation. Goons grab him, force him into a vehicle. They take him to a mental institution, pretending to think that that's going to brighten up his day and make him glad to be alive. They don't want him to end his suffering just yet by dying. They drug him. And look at the success stories when they ask the hostage, do you want to get committed or do you feel better now? Most of them say they feel better. You can't argue with success stories like that.
Right, because they want to go home.
If you want to know why somebody didn't go and get help, the answer might be right there in capital letters on your license plate. Don't forget this is New Hampshire, where the license plates say "Live Free or Die" in capital letters. So, the reason they didn't go get help might very well be the attitude of "Live Free or Die." They're not going to accept the clear and present danger of being locked up and drugged. So, comparing it to
most suicides?
By the way,
But aren't most suicides, they don't go through with it again? So more than 90% of people try suicide, that attempt suicide, attempt it once, and then they don't ever attempt it again.
Can we talk about the morality of the non-aggression principle for just a minute? Because it comes up in almost every outrageous hypothetical situation when people try to pin, libertarians or volunteers down on the advocacy of the non-aggression principle. And that is, you still have to take responsibility for your actions. So your claim is that when they tackle and, bring them in and drug the suicidal individual, it is a violation of the non-aggression principle, which is absolutely correct. Mm-hmm. But even if you are an advocate for and adherent to the non-aggression principle, that doesn't mean you're never able to violate it. It just means that upon violation, you take responsibility for the, for what comes next, for the outcome of that. And if the person, is upset that you kidnapped them and drugged them and wants to hold you accountable for the kidnapping and the drugging, well, then you have to take responsibility for that. If they're thankful and grateful that you prevented them from killing themselves and now they live a long and happy and prosperous life outside of the depression of suicide, well, then you take responsibility for that as well. So it's not that the non-aggression principle...
What would it look like, in your mind, Richie, where you've got a suicidal person, they haven't threatened anybody else, they're just, threatening themselves, and people who obviously they care about this person, they would prefer they not, commit the suicide, so people get called in, they get taken away to, a crazy ward for some amount of time while they're observed, and, hopefully they don't kill themselves while they're there and all that, and then later on they get out and they're upset. They've been in there for a few days, and they are, they're not crazy enough to kill themselves now, so they've been released or whatever. But
they're angry.
They have lost their 3 days. And what's the appropriate response there? What's the appropriate? How does that work out in your mind in a free society?
Well, in my mind, then they would take it to arbitration, right? I mean, that seems to be the judicial recourse in a free society, absent state court systems. Is they go like, I was kidnapped and drugged, beyond my wishes, without my consent. I demand to be made whole again, and then a third party would decide. Now, if I was the third party, I would likely decide in favor of the suicidal person.
And then you would give them some amount of...
Can I point something out?
Go ahead.
Okay, and that is another comparison I didn't get a chance to mention is in Mexico, it was the drug lords that are out to make more money, of course. And that's why they did that to the DEA agent in 1985. In the United States, it's the drug companies that want to make more money, and that's why they support forced hospitalization. And that, there's a lot of people saying that it's the drug companies that are out to keep people locked up.
Could be. Tom, thanks for the call tonight. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. I want to continue with this scenario. What would things be like without the government's system as we know it when you're dealing with a person who's suicidal? They wanted to kill themselves, but you stopped them from doing that and violated the non-aggression principle. We'll find out more about it coming up. It's Free Talk Live. You dial toll-free to join us here if you want. Our number is 855-450-FREE, the live Sunday edition of the program. Continuing with you in the studio is Ian,
Richie Rich,
and Mark.
Don't forget, you can join us online over at freetalklive.com. We got the AMP program, and that is where Sid is a Free Talk Live Silver amplifier. Silver meaning Sid's contributing $5 a month.
Thanks, Sid.
Thanks for the AMP program, which is advertise, market, promote. The idea is that $5 we take it in, combine it together with $5 from a few other folks, and then we will do things like use it to reach out to new radio stations to get Free Talk Live on the air, or help us pay for the new Free Talk Live clips that we've been putting out for the last 2 months. We just finished our second full month of basically daily clips of the video feed of the show. aggregated or added to with like photos and things like that. So it spices up the video, make it more interesting than just us sitting here talking. Those clips are now available, and that's thanks to the AMP dollars as well. So the idea is anything that can help us get the ideas of freedom out there to more people. That's what the AMP program is designed to do. And you get some cool perks if you're an amplifier, like access to the supporters chat rooms on our Discord server. There's the AMP-only Facebook group and more. Get all the details over at amp.freetalklive.com, amp.freetalklive.com. As we continue, we'll take your calls and thoughts more on Mark Zuckerberg. Plus, actually, before we get to the next call, I want to make sure we finish up this scenario, Richie, that you were talking about, sort of the idea of how the violation of the non-aggression principle, which is this kind of the bedrock principle of libertarianism, the idea that you shouldn't be using aggressive force against anybody.
True.
And that's kind of the one prohibition of libertarianism. So what happens in the situation where you have used aggressive force, meaning specifically we were talking about a suicidal person, somebody that you might know, for instance, family member, friend, somebody who may be a danger to themselves, and you feel like you have to have men with guns or professionals come and take that person against their will, because they wanted to kill themselves.
Yes.
Against their will, and check them in against their will into a mental health facility. You said after that, if that person wants to get some sort of compensation, that they should?
I think so.
So basically all somebody has to do is act suicidal and then get put into a suicide ward against their will, but they were just acting, and then they get to cash in later on, and because they spent 3 days on forced vacation at how many dollars a day? Like $10,000 a day? What's the appropriate amount of money per day that you've been forced against your will into a place?
So I'm a callous libertarian, if you want to call it that. Like, I do the anarchist experience, so I take
That's your show.
Yeah, so I take on the anarchist label, but at the same time I don't mind.
Anarchistexperience.com.
Yeah. Just to throw it out there, because I know there's some discrepancies on terminology, so I'll use them interchangeably depending on the audience. But I am a callous libertarian. I really don't care if you're suicidal, because that has no impact on me or my life.
Well, they could certainly leave a mess.
They could. And if that's the case, then that's no longer an aggressive act. That's a defensive act, preventing the mess from occurring on your property. So
you don't want them to blow their brains out against your living room
in my
wall.
apartment,
okay.
Right? Like I can throw them out onto the street and then have at it.
Well, usually the people that are most concerned about a suicide are the parents of the person who might be committing suicide.
True.
So that's the person that's,
or the lover, like wife or whoever.
Yeah. The wife or whomever has there's a claim, right? You made a contract. And that contract says you entered into a contract, and that contract says that you're going to share wealth.
You'll perform.
You're going to have certain deeds and these sorts of things.
That's an interesting modifier to this. What if it's your wife who calls the cops on you, and you were the suicidal person? Do you then get to collect from her because you were violating the contract at that point, right?
And again, that's a whole separate issue. If that were the case, though, I think in that circumstance, me as the victim, I wouldn't be seeking recourse against my wife, right? It would become a scenario where I really
because you would have violated
myself.
the contract, so you couldn't get any recourse there. What about the road company? You said if you throw somebody out into the street, then you don't have to worry about it. But what about whoever it is that owns the street? What if they don't want somebody to commit suicide on their street? Are they then within their rights to call the police and have that person removed?
Yeah, if we're talking about road companies as a private entity.
Now we're talking about no one wants to have someone commit suicide, with the exception of like some suicide room or something.
You could buy property.
Yeah.
Right,
and you could do it there.
But
Go
for
back
the most
to your
part,
house.
But now I'm just trying to understand how this would all play out in this theoretical world that doesn't exist, that we would all sort of like to see exist maybe at some point. But
and you do have the right to end your own life. However,
but how?
However you wish on your own property.
On your own property. I see.
Well, I've seen people up here will go out in the middle of winter and just stay there outside until they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just die of exposure.
Right.
Is that a thing? That's a way of suiciding?
Toby's cousin or something did it when we first showed up here.
And it was purposeful. It wasn't like they got too drunk and fell asleep in a snowbank.
Well, that I'm sure alcohol plays a role. You get significantly drunk enough, you go outside, you stay there. I mean, I don't know.
That may or may not have been intentional.
Either way,
I don't know the case.
The original scenario is someone prevents the suicidal person from going through with the act. Right. So if you can get away with killing yourself on somebody else's property, like, what do you care at that point? And, you're
dead.
You're dead. They're left to deal with it, but that's still on them. If they try to prevent you from doing it, well, then, like I said, that's, becomes a rights violation scenario. But me as the adjudicator, if you prevent someone from, killing themselves and they come back and say, no, I really wanted to do it, I'm owed something for it. Coming with the right to life is the right to die.
Do you think then, let's say it happens once, and you get $10,000 a day for every day that you are held against your will?
Who in the world is that? What are you, Bill Gates?
Okay, $1,000 a day, dude. I don't know what the
$1,000 a day.
Okay, I don't know what people.
I mean, the guy works at he's a fry cook at McDonald's. I mean, he's not worth $1,000, $100
just because
a day,
$40 a day.
Wait a minute. Just because you get paid a certain amount doesn't mean that that's actually what you're worth. I mean, some people would say a life is worth a lot more than $40 or whatever.
Well, they do economic calculations on that.
Yeah. Well, what do you expect the amount would be?
I don't know. That I couldn't give you. I think
right, because somebody's going to say, and whether they're right or not is another question, but somebody's going to be like, well, yeah, that's what I get paid at my job, but my time and my value of life is so much higher, and even though I was suicidal, I now value life, and I really want to get paid well for my freedom being taken away from me.
I guess he better not come to me as the arbiter.
Well, that's what I was going to get to here is like, you don't know what the amount would be. We don't know what these arbitrators would say.
I'm ready to talk about numbers.
Presumably first amount would be what it is. But then if the person goes off and does it again, do you think the arbitrator would be like, you're not going to get any money because you're trying to milk the system?
True. And at that point, too, at some point, you just let him cry wolf, right, and see if he goes through with it, right? If you're gonna pretend to commit suicide for financial gain.
Yeah, but parents aren't willing to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well...
And there's enough spoiled brats out there that are going to be like, I'm really going to do it, Mom. Mom, I'm going to do it this time.
Look over here. Look, I'm about to do it.
And then the trigger gets pulled.
I'm the callous arbiter.
He's dead. Right. Well, you don't care. The parents do. That's the kind of issue that we're dealing with here. And I think the best bet is to say, look, if you can make it to the age of 30, you shiftless bum, you can make it to the age of 30, then I will give you X number of dollars, right? And that's the best the parent can do.
That's not a bad scenario because then they have to live long enough to collect.
Yeah. Let's go to John. He's calling us from Honolulu. John, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Hi. This question is directed mostly to Rich.
All right.
Which government in history has lived in an anarchistic style for any length of time?
I'm going to say none.
And how did that? All right.
Well, because the idea of government is antithetical to the ideas of an anarchist society.
There are some.
Wasn't Iceland pretty anarchistic?
Yeah,
at one point?
It wasn't a government, but yeah, they had societal rules and stuff. So. I think this is one of the difficulties of, for one, this is the reason I never use this term. Sure. Because you get stuck into these conversations about, well, this can't possibly work. And, well, it may very well. But
people will say the same about libertarianism as well, though.
Well, libertarianism, I can say, look at the Old West right there. Bam.
Okay.
The old
the sheriff running the town.
Old West. Well, the
duels at high noon
usually didn't show up until later. Okay. But the sheriff just
hasn't changed.
Really, just controlled the keys to the jail. So there were certain sets of rules and that kind of thing. A judge would come by later, but there wasn't police, and things functioned all right. Mm-hmm. What the reason that what the anarchist writers write is basically they want to see rules, but not necessarily a ruling class. And I don't know how that can function. I don't know how that works necessarily, but people should be allowed to try, don't you think, caller?
To try? Yes, that's not. I'm not calling to judge whether to try it or not to try it. The question. Well, the follow-up question.
Stand by with that follow-up question. We'll come back with John. Is this somebody you know, by the way?
Yes.
Okay. We're coming up here in moments. This is because you're also from Hawaii. More on the way. It is Free Talk Live. Hour 2 is next.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with AgristHosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to AgristHosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's AgristHosting.com.
We'll try back.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. We're launching into the second hour of the program. You can dial in toll-free on this live Sunday edition. Our number is 855-450-FREE, like freedom. That's 855-450-3733. And we've got the Discord on-air call-in line rooms over at discord.lrn.fm. With you tonight, it's Ian,
Richie Rich,
and Mark.
We're going back to your phone calls and thoughts. In the first hour of the show, we did talk about some of what Mark Zuckerberg is demanding that the governments do, specifically regulate the social media world, maybe even all websites in general. We'll tell you more about it because we didn't finish his list of things that he's demanding. So we'll get into that. Your calls and thoughts also welcome. In fact, that's where we're going back to right now is John in Honolulu, where it is the early afternoon, if I'm not mistaken. And John, you're back on Free Talk Live. I forget where we were going with the conversation.
He had a follow-up question.
Well, I had asked if there had been a country that had run under anarchism. I didn't know the answer.
Right.
And Rich mentioned he didn't know of one.
Mm-hmm.
And my follow-up question is, does that answer speak to the viability of anarchism?
I think it was a question for Rich. So let's end.
Oh yeah, I'm going to say no because we evolve as a species and we move forward as a society, and the more freedom that society and individuals are allowed, the more we can progress toward a state where freedom is appreciated and demanded and granted. So I think the anarchist society is a natural evolution going forward, even if it hasn't been done in the past.
I'm not an anarchist myself. I am a voluntarist. I believe all human interaction should be consensual, but I also would like to see a society without a organized, coercive institutional apparatus that we
stateless.
Currently know as the government, which of course are just criminals, that are using violence and the threats of violence against people. I think your question, John, is kind of like asking somebody hundreds of years ago the idea of, well, we've never had a society without slavery, so, the idea that we shouldn't be able to have, to me...
But who will pick the cotton?
Right. To me, rejecting the state at this point in our evolution, and I like that term, is similar to rejecting slavery or chattel slavery back in the day. And most people did successfully reject slavery without having to go to war. It was only basically the United States that went to war over that issue.
And the answer is that it may... maybe the answer that's true, right? So this is what the logical fallacy known as argument from ignorance. Let's see, it has said, for lack of evidence to the contrary is a fallacy of informal logic. So because, it hasn't existed, does that mean that it can't exist? And the answer is, I don't know. And the reality is that we can't try. Right? Like if you attempt to try here in the United States, if you buy a piece of land in the United States, you say, hey, federal, state, and local government, we're checking out. We're going to run our own little show in here. Goodbye. You will find people with guns. Soon we'll be visiting.
Maybe tanks.
Yeah. And, you just act like you've got your own little country and you're doing your own little thing out there, and they'll be there, and they'll be there with violence because they are an organization that claims for themselves a monopoly privilege on the use of violence. I don't know if this could work, but we don't know whether it could exist or not because there are people who actively, violently will try to prevent it from occurring.
John? in Honolulu?
I have no comment beyond my question and your answers at this point.
All right.
I'm grateful to have been allowed on the show.
That's our pleasure. Thanks for the call tonight.
Appreciate it. Call back.
Enjoy the weather. Toll-free number here, 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733.
Let me ask you this, young Richie Rich.
Our token anarchist.
Yeah. Why in the world would you leave a place that's so gorgeous as Hawaii? I mean, it's one of the most wonderful places in the world, and here you are, you picked up and moved to the frozen tundra.
By the way, we learned that was your former boss calling in from Hawaii. Okay.
Hey,
John.
And still a good friend.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Well, to answer your question, Mark, I signed up for the Free State Project in 2007.
Which is a libertarian migration.
About the time I signed up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
2007?
No, you guys were here, Brad.
You would have moved here.
Oh. Yeah, I got my dates wrong.
You've been here a year.
I got my dates wrong. Sorry.
Anyway, if you can get past the weather on both sides, this is because everybody asked me that, even outside of this. If you can get past the weather in Hawaii and you can get past the weather here, it is much easier to make a living and get by here.
Really?
Yeah. And
is cost of living lower? That much lower?
Cost of living is a lot lower. Food and goods.
Except for pineapple. That's probably cheap in Hawaii, right?
Actually, pineapple I think they take to the mainland. Maybe fresh pineapple.
And then ship
I don't know.
it back.
Yeah,
this is the thing. So avocados are a big thing, right? Like my childhood home had a mango tree in the front yard and an avocado tree in the backyard. So we had
good living.
It is good living. Childhood home, though.
Yeah.
Right? But you go to the supermarket and there's locally grown avocados more expensive than the imports from California.
Wow.
And yet there's the buy local mentality everywhere.
Oh,
and
man.
You guys are too
why.
expensive. You're too expensive.
Yeah.
We have a dairy farm and milk is ridiculous. We got here to New Hampshire. We walked into Walmart to stock our fridge and milk was $1.50 a gallon.
Compared to?
$10.
No, really?
My mom pays about $10 for a gallon of milk. So as soon as we walked in, I told my wife, I was like, take a picture because we're sending this home.
Yeah.
And my mom was blown away. And then I go, now look at the bottom. There's no sales tax.
Right.
So it's like $1.50 was $1.50.
You got sales tax on food in Hawaii?
It's
at the grocery store?
It's technically a GE tax, so it covers everything. It's 4.5 some odd % across the board.
Wow.
Jeez. Right.
I mean, even in Florida, they didn't have tax on grocery food.
And there's an income tax. So
in Hawaii.
So
what percentage? Do you know? Is it sliding scale or is it flat? Because I know in Illinois it's flat. They got a flat tax, which they raised 66% a few years ago.
Honestly, 2007 was the last time I filed, so I shred that stuff. So, but it's there, it exists.
Yeah. Wow.
And Hawaii, you can't claim exempt on it. So I said 10 dependents, and so I kept most of my paycheck there. But my wages are lower here for pretty much the same job that I was doing back there, but it goes further.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, islands tend to be a bit more to live on, but
that's true.
And I have jackets, so
what's that?
I own jackets.
Oh, I see.
So I don't mind the cold here.
Yeah, the cold doesn't bother me either. It's just that I've been to Hawaii.
It bugs your wife, though.
It's wonderful. Yeah, my wife just leaves for the season, though. She, Florida's fine. She can go down there and stay with my mother. Or
you should
her
definitely
parents.
go vacation in Hawaii. It's wonderful weather.
Nice place to visit.
Nice place to visit. But if you're trying to make a living there, if you don't show up with money, you're not going to make much. Starting from scratch. In my experience.
If you want to join us here, the toll-free number is 855-450-FREE like freedom. So you made the move to New Hampshire.
And it's not like you can hop island to island easily or cheaply. It's expensive just to...
That too, right? So they had a super ferry that made it a little bit more convenient where you could drive your car onto a boat.
Yeah.
And the boat would go across island.
Didn't the government shoot down the super ferry?
A lot of protesters protested it and the company went belly up and took off.
What's the objection to the super ferry?
Too
much gas?
In the waters, messing it up.
The fact that it's there?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
so
just exists.
We don't want any business between these islands.
No. So I mean, you could catch a plane, and it's not inconvenient to catch a flight.
Yeah.
But it's $80, $100,
from one island to the next.
Yeah. So if you're not going,
that's not a daily activity. You can't afford that.
Right.
I mean, you might go once a year for a family reunion or something, but that would be about it.
Wow.
It's not like you're just hopping from island to island.
There are commuters though. My auntie did commute from one island to the other, but it was the business paid for it. So
right. Was she working for a bank or something?
I don't remember.
That's expensive.
Yeah.
So if you want to join us here, you're welcome to share your thoughts, whether it's on the liberty migration, which includes people who describe themselves as anarchists or libertarians or voluntarists. People who care about freedom are converging on one place. You mentioned the Free State Project. That's one of the projects. There's also the Shire Society, which is a more decentralized option that doesn't have a board of directors and nobody in charge, no membership list involved there. So go to move.shiresociety.com if you want to learn more about that and some reasons why you ought to move here. There's 101 great reasons why liberty lives in New Hampshire. A nice little documentary film was produced about that back in 2014, and it's still relevant, I think, to this day. Wasn't that an influence on you?
I did watch the video. I don't know if
before you moved.
Before I moved, okay. Yes. I think I watched it after I signed the statement of intent.
I see.
It was at a time where I looked at a lot of different things.
101reasonsfilm.com. You can go and watch it there. It's free online. That's 101reasonsfilm.com. We continue with what Mark Zuckerberg is demanding that governments around the world do. He wants more laws, more regulations, more GDPRs. We'll tell you about
less
that.
Competition.
Coming up here in moments. And your calls and thoughts are welcome at 855-450-FREE, like freedom. That's 855-450-3733. This is Free Talk Live. It is Free Talk Live. You bring up anything that you want. We're here on the live Sunday edition of the show. Our toll-free number is 855-450-FREE, like freedom. That's 855-450-3733. Also, we've got the Discord on-air call-in line rooms. We will continue and take your calls and thoughts about anything. And more on the way of Mark Zuckerberg calling out to world governments, regulate me, please, and all the other guys too. Make sure you regulate them just as hard.
That's the gotcha.
Yeah, so we'll get into more of what his demands are. It's Ian Ritchie and Mark on in our Keene studios. We go back to your calls and thoughts. I do want to let you know about Liberty.menu. It is a tool for your community if you are a liberty-minded person. If you're an individual who rejects the initiation of force and who agrees to abide by the ethics of the non-aggression principle, then you qualify to use Liberty.menu. So whether you are a business person or an events coordinator or a digital content creator, there are categories for the things that you do there at Liberty.menu. You can also rate and review, and there's even a social networking aspect to allow you to connect and share with others. So get on over to Liberty.menu. It's free. So whatever it is that you're doing, you want other liberty-minded folks to know about it, put it up there over at Liberty.menu. As we go to your calls and thoughts, Dodger is on the line in Michigan, listening via the TuneIn app. Go ahead, Dodger.
Sorry the Discord thing didn't work out, but
that's all right.
Yeah, you touched a little bit on suicide, and where I don't necessarily have a lot of experience there. I do know what my father has, which is something called a DNR.
Do not resuscitate?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's something, maybe the Christian anarchist could probably articulate this a little better than I can. However, I had a hard time, or I struggled with this when my father asked me to become his power of attorney, because his condition for me being his power of attorney is that I would honor his DNR.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
But that's not the same thing as preventing a suicide, right? Like a DNR is, if I have a heart attack and I am dead, do not put the paddles on me, right? Like, do not put any effort into bringing me back to life, as I understand it. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, I guess you could say
it's a similar moral conundrum, though. Like, what do you do from his perspective? Because it's someone you love dying, and you have the opportunity to stop that.
And you can't, at this point, we still don't know every scenario that might happen medically. So to some extent, there's this wiggle room amongst DNRs. And many people have had their DNRs not respected by people, including power of attorney and that kind of thing. Because, the medical field, they want to save people. And it's their job to save people. So when you say, no, don't save me, they get a little confused. They don't really know what to do, and they get upset. So
Well, what happened with me is, based on my faith, is I had to think about it. I had, because I couldn't give him an answer right away. But then I just came to this realization at some point that if the God that I believe in really wants the person to live, once the plug is pulled, they'll live.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Sure.
And so that was just I heard you guys talking a little bit about, suicide, and I know it's not the same thing.
Well, I mean, there's some people who would say the same thing about suicide. So, for instance, many of our listeners may remember TJ the Spy. I don't think I'm out of line telling this. I'm pretty sure he's told it on the air, that he attempted suicide. He took way too many pills on purpose with the intention of killing himself, and he survived it. Like a seriously deadly kind of dose. I don't remember what the pill was that he took, but he should have died. However, it seems that something else had plans for TJ, and whatever, God or the universe or some little piece of him inside or whatever said, nope, you're not going out this way. And nobody got there in time. Basically, he should have been dead. And they did end up getting to his body, but he came back from it. It's amazing.
Well, I was going to say, having heard TJ the Spy on the radio, the world's definitely better off with him in the world.
I'm glad that he didn't end up dead, because he was great on the air, and hopefully we'll see him back someday.
Well, and I it's as much as I feel like my dad is better off on this earth. In the same sense, it's not for me to decide what another person's wishes are.
However, in the circumstances of a person who you care about who has lost their mind, you can say it's not for you to decide, but in that circumstance, the person you love is not acting like the person that you know. They are acting as a crazy person. They have lost their mind. And in those cases, I don't think it's inherently wrong for somebody who cares to step in and try to help that person, even if it does seem to be against their crazy will in that particular moment. Now, as Richie pointed out, in his ideal society, the person who tries to help the suicidal crazy friend or family member would then be held liable, but the question is to what extent?
And liable is a strong word. I said responsible. Like, you have to take responsibility for your actions, and if you choose to save them, you think you're doing it in their best interest. Mm-hmm. You're hoping that they agree with you when they come to their right state of mind.
Right.
Oh, I'd actually, after thinking about it and praying about it and all of that, I would definitely have to agree.
Dodger, thanks for your call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. We go.
I wonder about what the right state of mind is in some cases. Like, some people are crazy all the time. Mm-hmm. I recently had to deal with a crazy person in the line of my business, and I suspect that crazy person, if you ask them today how they feel about how I acted, that they think that I'm a bad person. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And somebody, that crazy person's in a relationship, and probably the person that she's in a relationship with doesn't think that I did the right thing either.
Well, and I would say the entire scenario is based off a close relationship with another individual. And I think in a close relationship with another individual, you've had the time to generate a baseline of how you think
that person's like,
what they're like normally, and then how off they are from that baseline and what to expect.
We continue here. Bad Slave is on the line with us on our Discord server. Go ahead, Bad Slave.
Thank you. Just want to say real quickly, if you saved somebody's life that tried to commit suicide and they really didn't want you to, it's a simple thing to do it more effectively.
Right, they should just go and finish the job rather than go to court and try to get you. Get $50 out of you.
True.
Yeah, no.
How committed are they to the end?
Getting back to anarchy.
Hold that thought, Bad Slave. We'll continue with anarchy here in moments. Our toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. As we continue the live Sunday edition of Free Talk Live, you're welcome to join us. And more on the way about Facebook demanding regulations. It's Free Talk Live.
Did you know you can legally exit the U.S. federal income tax system? Well, it's true, and thousands of American nationals are doing it. The 16th Amendment and the Internal Revenue Code are legal, but only in a limited jurisdiction. This is the basis behind the voluntary nature of the income tax. Learn the exit strategy provided by Congress. Find out more by visiting weissparis.com and watch our numerous videos. That's WEISS Paris.com.
Free Talk Live. You dial in here toll free. Bring up whatever you want. Our number, 855-450, free like freedom. That's 855-450-3733. We've also got the Discord on-air call-in line rooms over at discord.lrn.fm. Hop into one of those. We'll get you on the air. You'll sound almost like you're sitting here in the studio with us. And with you tonight, it's Ian.
Richie Rich.
And Mark.
Forkfest 2019 is coming up this summer, actually just before the summer, technically like the week before summer officially starts. It'll be June 13th through the 18th.
You do not want to go.
Don't go in February.
Yeah.
They're going to be closed.
Yeah.
But Rogers Campground is the location. It is a beautiful spot to be right there, nestled in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Again, June 13th through the 18th. It is already time for you to get over and lock down your campsite or your RV site at Rogers, or there's also a motel. You can do that too. So forkfest.party. Go there. You can connect to the Forkfest chat room on Telegram, also the Forkfest forum. And Forkfest is a libertarian camping event, but there's no organizers. There's no central committee, I guess is what I mean. There are organizers. Each individual can organize whatever it is that they want to do on their own campsite. So if you want to have a speaker series, you want to have a poker game, musical event, whatever it is, put on a play. I don't know, whatever it is people want to do, you can do that at Forkfest. Forkfest.party. As we go back to your calls and thoughts, Bad Slave, you're back on Free Talk Live on our Discord lines. You wanted to talk about anarchy, so go ahead.
Right. It was Rich that started out. Hi, Rich, by the way.
Hello.
Good to see you. Thank you for that ride you gave me a while back. Anyway, I have to disagree with Ian because he keeps spouting off every time he hears anarchy. Well, I don't believe in anarchy. Well, no, you don't disbelieve in anarchy. You disbelieve in the false definition of anarchy because,
what's the true definition of it?
But the true definition is no rulers. And in order to...
Okay, but I rule myself.
Yeah.
Exactly. No,
so that would make me an auto-archist.
Right, that's an auto-archist.
Well, yeah,
anarchy's a terrible word. I'm sorry. I mean, give me the opportunity to tear into this thing, and I absolutely would.
When we talk about rulers, we talk about coercion. It's all one ball of wax.
Well,
whether
there's a term. If you want to create a word that means no rulers, anarchy is that word. If you want to create a word that means self-rule, autarky would be the proper way to put that terminology together to create its own term. Now, why in the world a bunch of libertarians just are desperate to take this word that in fact means a communist historically and internalize it for themselves? I don't know why. I mean, it's the most boring show on the internet.
It's because the logo's
libertarians.
Cool.
The logo is
cool.
To watch libertarians argue with socialists about who's the real anarchist. I mean, it is crap.
But is the logo that much cool? I would say the logo is no cooler than the Circle V from V for Vendetta. If you want to use that for voluntarism, it's basically just as cool.
I think all those words, work in their own way, and it just seems kind of silly to bring it up. But
you called in
interchangeably.
Wait a minute. You called in.
Yeah. Well, I did.
You just brought it up.
I did, but
okay. Then you're silly
up,
for bringing it up.
The most important issue is that in America today, that we actually get to choose our actions quite widely. In other words, on a base by base, rate,
case by case basis,
the actions of people are truly without without rulers are voluntary. We get to choose so many things. I mean, like Friedman, and
well, I don't agree with you on that point, Bad Slave, because while many actions and most actions people take are voluntary, meaning whether it's going to the store or taking care of business or whatever it is, taking care of their kids or whatever it is they're doing, they're doing it voluntarily in most cases. They still, many of them, believe in the idea of rulers. They just want the ruler to let them do their family the way they want to do their family. But they still think they need to have a ruler. Otherwise, we'd have people rejecting the idea of the state far and wide. And they don't reject the idea of the state. People love the state. They love the ability to have their own freedom, for sure. But
they love the ability to go after other people's freedom. That's
exactly
what they really want.
Thank you, Bad Slave, for the call tonight. Appreciate the discussion. Our toll-free number here, if you want to join us, is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. So I tend to agree with you on this one, Mark, and that is I don't have any love for the term anarchy. It doesn't really float my boat at all. I like to define, even if it did mean what I believe, and I don't think it does, because I'm in favor of voluntary interaction between humans. I like to say what I'm in favor of rather than what it is that I'm against. And so even though I'm not in favor of people being ruled without their consent, that doesn't do enough to really describe what I believe in. And I believe in a voluntary society. Hence, I'm a voluntarist.
Right. And what I said off the air, and I'll say it again here, is there's a lot of those terms that I will use interchangeably because to me, they all have the common basis. So in a room full of libertarians, I am definitely the anarchist. Right, but I will accept the term.
The distinction in
well.
and under that circumstances, and by the way, I don't spend a lot of time arguing with people about this term because I think it's pointless. But I won't use it. No one will call me an anarchist because you can't tell me what I am. However,
well, you can tell me, but you're wrong.
I mean, yeah. So, I suppose
thanks for the opinion.
But
everyone's got them.
Right. I mean, in your case, you've got a podcast that's called The Anarchist Experience.
Sure.
You're stuck, right? You own that term at this point.
But I own it and I accept it and I use it as it is intended to be used. So I pulled up a quote from Jeff Berwick that tends to sum it up as well as I can in this short time span. All the word anarchy means is no rulers. So if you say you are not an anarchist, it means you want a ruler. If you want a ruler, you are a slave. I'm surprised how many people are comfortable publicly identifying themselves as a slave.
Am I a slave to myself if I'm in favor of self-rule?
Well, what does self-rule even mean? It's to me, that's a non-term, right? Self-rule, self-ownership. It's just another way to describe of not having anyone ruling above you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So if there's
if I am my own ruler, that means I do still have a ruler. It's me.
Yeah, but it's a weird thing. It's
weird
again.
To you?
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I don't use the term
I don't use the term auto-archist either, because again, it's not a
well.
Term
if you want to use the term anarchist, don't act like you're doing it to disambiguate the situation. Because it's rare that it does.
It's making things less clear.
Right. It makes things less clear.
Depends on the audience, which is why I say
if you go on the radio and you say, I'm an anarchist, people believe you throw Molotov cocktails with a bandana across your face in European countries whenever something goes wrong. That's what they think of you as. Because that's what an anarchist is.
To them.
According to the news.
Yeah.
And when you look at, you got to get in people's worlds. So if you want to, if words are intended to communicate things, anarchist, to my mind, is a poor communication tool on especially a general interest radio program to describe what you are. If you want to use it, that's on you, but I won't be using it up for me.
Let's go to Drew. He's in Virginia, listening to WNIS in Virginia Beach. Go ahead, Drew.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
So I just want to start out and say I've been listening to your show probably a couple times a week.
Thanks.
And, I like it. I don't generally agree with everything.
That's okay.
The libertarian views, but I do vote libertarian sometimes because I feel like I'd like to see 4 or 5 parties, and the only way to get to 4 or 5 parties and end this monopoly that the Republicans and Democrats has is to get a third party. Yep. Libertarians being the most viable third party.
All right.
And I would like to see no parties.
Oh yeah, that's
you're going the wrong direction.
Right. Sure. But the more parties you have, the more it dissolves into. You know what I'm saying? I'd like to see
I understand.
100 parties. Right, so that's the other way to do the math. But I'm a registered nurse. I have 22 years of experience. I just want to talk about the DNR status.
Let's talk about it. Hang on, Drew. We'll continue here. Your calls and thoughts are welcome. You can bring up what you want here on the live Sunday edition of Free Talk Live. Our toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. And we've got the Discord on-air call-in line rooms over at discord.lrn.fm. Hop in any one of those. We'll get you on the air with us. It's Free Talk Live. It's Free Talk Live. You can dial in toll-free here and join us on the live Sunday edition. Our number is 855-450-FREE. Like freedom, that's 855-450-3733. Tonight, it's Ian,
Richie Rich,
and Mark.
We go back to your phone calls and thoughts. Plus, we still have the remainder of Mark Zuckerberg's demands. He wants more government involvement in his business and everybody else's. We'll tell you about that coming up here. But first, we go back to Drew in Virginia. You were calling about the do not resuscitate orders, and you said you've got experience in was it the medical field?
He's a nurse.
Yeah, I'm a registered nurse.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So, I don't know. So, the DNR status, you can start that yourself, unless, of course, you've handed over your POA to your power of attorney over to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what the last caller was trying to do with his father.
Right. And so the DNR status, it cannot be overturned unless it's the person who has the power of attorney, yourself or someone else. I'm sure it's been I'm sure it's been attempted before, but I just wanted to say real quick that people should educate themselves about what happens during a code, what can be done during a code.
What's a code?
Really quick, like a code blue, like when you do CPR.
Mm-hmm.
Like if somebody's unresponsive, doesn't have a pulse, doesn't have any respirations, it's generally called a code blue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when like in the movies, when
their face turns blue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's probably where it came from. But in my personal experience, and from my personal experience, over 90% of the people who are, over 90% of code blues don't survive, and the ones that do are not in the greatest of situations. But
like brain damage,
they all survive on TV.
Absolutely.
They just take those little zapper things, the paddles, chapow, and they're back.
Right,
it's
right.
Awesome.
And nobody, and they never, I've only once in 22 years has a patient regained some form of consciousness, and he didn't get up and talk and start.
That's a little disconcerting.
Yeah,
I thought I had better odds.
Really want to say that.
Sorry, guys.
Well, before you go on, I want to talk about the DNR. So the do not resuscitate. I should use that term. Do not resuscitate order. Now, if I fill one of these out, and it's sitting in my lawyer's office, and my wife, I have some kind of medical issue at home, and my wife tells the ambulance driver or whatever, yes, she wants, do everything you can to get back my loving husband. What's really going to happen? Honestly, they're not going to know about the DNR, let alone.
Doesn't it have to be like put on your driver's license or something like that, and that's supposed to clue them in?
Or a medical bracelet of some kind?
So very, very good scenario. So, number one, you're absolutely correct. The DNR the paperwork for the DNR has to be well known. Now, in a facility, in a nursing home or in a hospital, that should be on what's known as your face sheet. It's the first sheet of paper in a paper chart.
Okay.
Right. Some places have like clipboards, but mainly, or also on the clipboard, right? Depends on the paper form of the chart.
Okay.
That has to be in there. Otherwise, we consider everybody to be what's called full code, which means we will do anything and everything that needs to be done. A verbal no code and DNR is also no code. A verbal full code or no code DNR status is not applicable. Now, however, an ambulance driver and or an EMS, first responders will always assume that someone is a full code.
Unless they find some evidence otherwise.
Well, actually, it depends on the locality. It depends on the. I'm not entirely sure. I don't do EMS, but from my EMS friends do tell me that basically everyone's full code unless they're not. Unless someone's being unless you have like a nursing home patient who's being transported to a hospital and that person has a pre-existing chart that says DNR on it. But that all depends, for the most part, from what I understand, and I'm not EMS, I'm a registered nurse. So for the most part, in that first responder scenario, everyone's full code. Everyone's full code.
Well, you would figure that'd be the default. And then if for some reason they are given legitimate information that this person is a DNR, then presumably they would go ahead and honor that. But by the time...
Right.
Yeah,
I've never heard of a situation where someone me personally, in my limited experience in life, I've never heard of a first responder not do something because someone was DNR.
How many patients have you come across that are DNR patients? Of what percentage of patients have that?
So when you're in I'm going to turn around right now. I'm on lunch break. I'm going to work. So I would say in long-term care, your nursing home, probably close to 50%. In a skilled rehab facility, there's probably 20-30%. I'm sure there's a nurse right now listening thinking, who's, whatever. But just personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
In a hospital, it tends to be less.
I would think so.
10%.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? So the longer the more you're in chronic conditions, more you're in long-term care,
they're more likely to acquire a DNR.
So let's tie this back to the original scenario of helping someone who may not have wanted to be helped. In the case of the DNR, I'm the patient, I have the DNR, you don't know about it or you ignore it and you resuscitate me. What is the consequence to you as the person who violated the DNR, and what is my recourse as the patient?
So I have not known anyone to violate a DNR status. I mean, if you're in a medical facility, a hospital, a clinic, or whatever, and we are already a pre-existing patient and have a chart, we know who's DNR because there's a big fluorescent sticker that says DNR on your paperwork.
Yeah, they don't want to get that wrong.
Yeah, it's it's the most prominent sticker there is, and it's on other forms too. So in general, I would never want to violate anyone's DNR status. I don't know anybody else who would want to either.
Okay.
Thank God that scenario has not come up in my personal experience.
It's a good question. There are answers to that, obviously, on the internet about what happens in the case if somebody has a DNR and it is violated, but I haven't really found the answer yet. Hey, Drew, thanks for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. Thanks for the expertise. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. Let's talk to Sarah in New Mexico. Sarah, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Yes, I just want to bring a problem unique to Albuquerque. The apartment renters here, they love to play music really loud.
You think that's unique to Albuquerque?
Didn't you live in New York City?
Well, I mean, do you have that problem? New Hampshire? I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
But Albuquerque, they got boom boxes in their cars.
Do you think you're the only? You think Albuquerque's the only place in the world where people are a-holes and don't respect their neighbors?
Look, I don't always listen to rock music, but when I do, so do my neighbors.
It's Guns N' Roses. It's supposed to be played loud.
What other cities do this? California, Phoenix, Arizona? What
Every
other
city where people live nearby one another.
Yes. Everybody believes that somehow their music is more interesting than everybody else's.
And if it's Guns N' Roses, they're right.
They feel like they have no neighbors. That's another thing. You know what I mean? They feel like that's because I don't know. And then you know.
Oh no, they know they have neighbors. They just don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, but is it like a?
I'm taking it this is happening to you where you're living, right, Sarah? You've got some neighbors who are cranking up the tunes a little too loud.
What if they were playing classical music?
You know something? I think they're doing it on purpose because they hate me.
Really? Now, what evidence do you have that they hate you?
Yeah, normally I would think this was paranoia, but I may agree. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking because I attack the smokers and I see them smoking and coughing.
You attack them?
Physically violating the NAP?
I beat them up on the show, like the smokers.
Oh, they're probably not listening, though.
Are they playing Free Talk Live
loud?
I
have no idea.
That would be quite a prank.
They stay, and everybody else gets run out. I have 15 different neighbors. They move in 3 months, they move out, and they've been here doing this for the last year and a half.
So
it's very bizarre.
Are they right next door, meaning you're in an apartment complex and they are next to you directly?
Have you addressed this with the landlord?
Maybe about 20, 30 feet, maybe 40 feet. But it's enough to...
So is there like an apartment between you and them? Are you in an apartment building where there's walls between apartments, or are you in like a cottage, like buildings that are separated from one another?
So the walls are next to each other, but there's a little tree area between me and them.
So they're across the way from you?
Right.
Okay.
But the sound,
mm-hmm.
they woke me up like 5 times at night.
That's frustrating.
They play it just
Can't you find a Section 8 house that's not, right next door to another one?
Earplugs.
Thanks for the call tonight.
They have sound dampening earplugs at Walmart.
It's true.
It's the best I can recommend.
Or get your own house away from people, right? If you can't live next to people, because that comes with living next to people, is they're loud and rude sometimes.
Sound dampeners in the walls.
More
on the walls.
Free Talk Live.
Business owners. You want more customers? Accept cryptocurrencies. There's people all around you just waiting to spend money at your store. If only you would take it. I know, you've been waiting till someone else makes it easy. Well, good news. HelpMeTakeBitcoin.com adds Bitcoin to your point of sale. Totally free. Use the same equipment you already have, now with Bitcoin. And unlike credit cards, there's no fees. Let the guys at HelpMeTakeBitcoin.com bring new customers to your store. HelpMeTakeBitcoin.com.
Free Talk Live.
Hey, it is Free Talk Live. We are launching into the third hour of this live Sunday edition of the show. You can dial in toll free and take control of the airwaves here. If you want, you can bring up anything that's on your mind. Coming up, we got the remainder of the things that Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, is now demanding the government step in and get involved in his business and everybody else's who runs a website, apparently, especially if it's so-called social media. He wants government regulations, which, of course, as we pointed out earlier, means he wants to write them or have his attorneys write them. And then they'll be forced upon everybody, supposedly, to help keep everyone safe.
This is how regulation works, ladies and gentlemen. I know that, many people, whenever we talk about regulation, it's always environmental regulations people call in about.
No, it's just sometimes business regulation.
Usually it's environmental. When people call in to defend regulation, they call in generally and defend environmental regulation, which, of course, they're
planet
looking
is for everybody.
The organizations like the EPA, who's recently guilty of poisoning the Colorado River. But whatever, we need somebody. What's the other solution? It's what they tend
property rights.
Yeah, right. Hyperventilate on. But I mean, the regulations are most often written by, and there's many, so many regulations you couldn't read them all. They're most often written by the biggest, most powerful business in that particular sector.
Yep. We can continue that. Your calls and thoughts, though. First, we go to Gene, the Christian anarchist, on the line on our Discord server. Go ahead, Gene.
Hey, I heard the discussion about anarchy. Of course, I got to pipe in.
He has been summoned. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. I heard my name called. Okay. Look, if you got somebody like Hitler, and he calls himself a saint, I don't think that people are going to start thinking that saints are Hitler. So the fact that people are misusing the term anarchy does not make it so. And if you look up anarchy in any definition, I just did a search online, and every definition I find, none of them shows anything about throwing Molotov cocktails. Anarchy refers to a society entity. Yeah, entity or a group of people that rejects hierarchy. And it says that the history, it originally meant leaderless, but in 1840, this French guy adopted the term in his treatise, What is Property, which advocates stateless societies based on voluntary associations. That sounds like you, Ian.
No, Ian. Wait a minute. You said anarchists reject hierarchy. Now, that's different than saying no rulers, right? Because don't anarchists work jobs where they have managers? Didn't they then consent to that structure?
Well, I can click on hierarchy. It's a Greek term, rule of a high priest. So, yeah, I kind of reject that.
Okay. I understood hierarchy to mean like a pyramidal structure.
That there's some kind of hierarchical structure, right? Like somebody's in charge, somebody's maybe in charge of somebody who's in charge, and somebody may be in charge of somebody who's in charge and who's somebody in charge.
And the people who took those jobs accepted that when they walked through the door. So does that mean if you have one of those jobs and you call yourself an anarchist, you're a fake? You're not actually an anarchist because you've sold out?
I'm going to say no as well.
Because it says right here, your society is based on voluntary association. So your voluntary association can also be a hierarchy if it's a...
Okay, so then you're not necessarily against hierarchies if you consent to the hierarchy, if you're an anarchist.
I think what it means here is a forced hierarchy or
okay.
A society where...
Because the definition of hierarchy, according to dictionary.com, number one at least, is any system of persons or things ranked one above the other. So that's what a...
I reject the notion that people go through life looking at dictionary.com for the definition of things. People operate with working definitions of words, and the working definition of an anarchist is a violent communist.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
Go look at the news media.
You can't find that definition anywhere.
No, it doesn't matter.
No, I'm talking about the working definition.
It's what people believe.
What exists in people's minds.
So if the working definition of saint becomes somebody who's a Nazi, then from now on, everybody who's a Nazi is a saint?
I would say that the definition of saint is well established as a person who does good things. But if the first time you heard the word saint, it had something to do with Hitler, then yes, it has been corrupted for you. But since it's just one person, likely you will be corrected over time. However, when you have a societal endemic problem, which the word anarchy does, I don't. Gene, let me ask you this. Why do you want to save this term? You know it's messed up. Why do you want to save it so bad?
Because it's the correct term, and it's an ancient term.
I am not here to fix the world on every word.
Anarchy is the natural state of life.
Let me ask you this. Gene, do you like children?
I hate children.
Okay.
I want to eat them.
You know that there are people in the world that like children,
I'm going to have
right?
a couple for dinner.
Should we call children, people who like children, pedophiles? Because that's, if you look at the Greek terminology,
lovers of children.
That's a lover of children. They love children.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
okay, but
Ian's an audiophile. He doesn't have sex with audio equipment
that you know of.
I don't know that.
Well, I'm giving you the information as a person who knows Ian the best in this world. I do not believe that happens.
You better check that equipment carefully.
Well, I'm not going to run a test, but it's nothing sticky.
So let me chime in on the anarchist with a job real quick, because I accept the label.
You've got a manager at your job, right?
And I have a job.
Yeah.
Right. But
somebody's a boss.
The relationship with my job is I sell my labor for pay.
That's right.
To me, it's an equitable trade for both parties.
Sure, you volunteered into that agreement,
right? So
to me,
you're not against hierarchy then, as an anarchist.
I don't even see my job as hierarchical.
I'm sitting over here saying,
however you want,
look,
but
I
don't see it that way either.
I've got a stance here. My stance is that Richie Rich and Gene aren't actually anarchists.
Really?
I just don't want to spend the time trying to disabuse them of the notion. So they're going to sit there saying they are, and I'm going to sit there saying they're not. But that's what I really believe. So when Richie Rich says, I'm in a job and I'm in a hierarchical, I don't care. Like, I'm more interested in a European communist that throws Molotov cocktails, what he says. And what he's going to say is that the working class and bourgeoisie and
rise up,
blah,
take
blah,
over
blah,
the
blah, blah.
means of production.
Yeah. Trotsky said,
because they don't understand the concept of equitable trade.
That's the same situation as a Nazi calling themselves a saint. You're talking about the exact same thing. You can't.
They had it first.
They had it first.
First of all, no, they didn't have it first.
Yes, they did.
This term goes back to 1840. So, and in fact, it goes back beyond that. It's actually
if you want the etymology of a word, you want to look at the history of a word, you're going to need to go to Wikipedia and leave dictionary.com alone. So you go.
I'm at Wikipedia. That's where I just read that.
There was also a YouTube channel that had the anarchist experience before us.
Dictionary.com actually does have etymology. I don't know if you know this, but the origin of the word, according to Dictionary.com, is Middle French anarchy or Medieval Latin anarchia, Greek anarchia, meaning lawlessness, literally lack of a leader, equivalent to anarchos or leaderless.
So the chaos, the people that use it as a synonym for chaos.
Leaderless does not mean chaos, but the point I'm getting at is that the term Well, I use this term amongst all kinds of people that I meet, including doctors. They don't think that I'm throwing Molotov.
No, I don't think they do.
Because they know you personally.
When I say that, that I'm an anarchist.
No, I think more or less what they do is they just back off because it's not worth having an argument over somebody who's going to call themselves an anarchist.
He's a good customer. Let him call himself whatever
he wants to call himself.
Just start calling everyone else a slave and see how they like
it. Right.
Yeah, well, just because a term is misused by a certain subset doesn't mean that it's that way. I don't think most
journalist.
I don't think most people believe what you believe. Most people don't believe what you believe. Most people don't believe that anarchists want to destroy things.
You don't think?
Yeah.
I'd love to see a survey on that one. Because media is pretty persuasive, man.
Wrong.
I mean, whenever you see the term anarchist made or used in the media, it's always in reference to violence in the streets, disruptive protests, destruction of property. It's always associated with that. So, I mean, if you're right about that, that'd be great. Let's see somebody do a poll of 1,000, randomly selected phone numbers or whatever, and see what people actually think. What is it that you think? What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word anarchist? A, bomb throwing. B, destruction of property. C, peaceful, fun-loving folks.
And I want those bomb-throwing anarchists to select their targets more judiciously.
Here's a good thing to try. Next time Sarah calls, ask her what an anarchist is. Maybe she can give us a little insight.
Well, she is a communist, so who knows what she'll say. Thanks for the call, Gene. I appreciate it. There's more coming up here. 855-450, free like freedom. You join us here. It's Free Talk Live. It is Free Talk Live. Dial toll-free and bring up anything you want. Our number for you is 855-450-FREE, like freedom. That's 855-450-3733. Get interactive with other Free Talk Live listeners and some of the hosts of the show on our Discord server over at discord.lrn.fm. Once again, that's discord.lrn.fm. As we
right now, they are in there discussing Ian's sexual proclivities
with the radio equipment specifically.
Radio equipment, yes.
So you can, and that's a new topic that's never happened before.
The flashlight microphone.
Been accused of a lot of things. That one.
No. I've already turned this around.
By the way, there's a headline over at the Washington Post from, when was this? 2017. Headline: What draws Americans to anarchy? It's more than just smashing windows.
See?
So even there in the headline, the Washington Post is acknowledging what most people think, or at least what they believe most people think, about anarchists. And then, of course, the picture that they feature is of two purported anarchists dressed in black, one carrying a baseball bat, posing for the photo. It wasn't like at a protest or anything like that. So again, suggesting violence is heavily involved with these people. Now, the whole article is very lengthy. It's a feature piece, and I'm sure it's interesting, but we don't have time for it. We continue.
And if I cared what other people think, I wouldn't adopt the label either.
Well, indeed. Discord.lrn.fm. I am a communicator, so I, to some extent want to be effective in my communications. While I'm not concerned so much with what people think about my ideas, I would prefer they not be written off without giving me a chance to explain them. And when I use the term voluntarist, it generally doesn't draw any conclusions, I don't think, in the average person's mind, because thankfully there haven't been too many news reports about voluntarists destroying people's property and, being generally unruly.
And to some extent, it's sort of contrary to the definition, right? Like,
what's contrary to what definition?
A voluntarist doesn't sound like somebody who goes around destroying property.
That's true.
In the name. Whereas an anarchist, it doesn't necessarily, you would not necessarily have a connotation about the word until somebody created a connotation, and that connotation's, it seems to me, well established, especially if the Washington Post mentions it right off the bat.
Let's go to Free Market Penguin in Virginia, listening to us, or actually calling in through our Discord call-in lines at discord.lrn.fm. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm listening to you on Twitch at twitch.lrn.fm.
Hey, thanks for doing that. By the way, we're over 30 whole viewers on Twitch. Wow. Woo. Thanks.
Yeah, about halfway to where we
we'd like to get to 75 pretty consistently so we can then have a shot at what they call Twitch Partner. But so thanks to everybody who has left a browser tab open on our Twitch channel at twitch.lrn.fm.
And please, if you haven't.
All 29 of you.
Yeah, please open that up and leave it open.
There's some
if you
chatting
can.
going on in there.
It makes a difference for us. And the more people can watch us on Twitch, the higher our numbers, the more people will then find us on Twitch because we will go up in the rankings. The rankings are all based on view count. So thanks for that. Go ahead with what you were calling about.
Yeah, I just wanted to call about the term anarchy. And, when I first started with the libertarian end of the political spectrum, listening to Free Talk Live and everything, and some of the affiliated shows, I got this idea about anarchists, what the word anarchy means. And it basically, means, okay, someone's libertarian. But the next step, absolutely no government is anarchy. And as I've kind of gotten to know more people, I've started to get to know anarchists. And then the anarchists that I did know, like actual anarchists, as in the traditional use of the word, and they were specifically not communist anarchists, but they were very solidly of the traditional definition. And
what is the traditional? What is the traditional definition?
So anarchy. Most anarchists by the traditional definition are anarcho-communists. Are basically it's so
even they require a hyphen.
It's an anti-communist. Anarchism or anarchy is traditionally an anti-capitalist system opposing unjust hierarchies and the use of coercive state. And it's always been an anti-capitalist system, and capitalists co-opting the term that call us a libertarian, which I do agree that I'm sure you guys have, you and Gene and such have libertarian views, but I'm sure you seem to espouse capitalism, and anarchy has always been. Anarchy has always been an anti-capitalist movement.
Well, I don't espouse capitalism. I espouse the free market, and I think that people should be able to try whatever economic organizational systems that they want to.
Yeah, you and Mark, I think, covered this last night, actually, about that. That's why I didn't. Yeah, I think you had some good things to say about it.
Here's an excerpt from, since we got you on the line here, I'm again looking at this Washington Post story about the anarchists. It says here they're talking about a couple anarchists specifically, and they say their anarchist community made a fiery entrance into the Trump presidency on January 20th when they organized thousands of people to protest his inauguration by blocking security checkpoints and marching in the streets. Hundreds of them, clad in black clothes and masks, rioted through the downtown. They used wooden poles and pieces of concrete to break storefronts and smash newspaper boxes. According to an indictment in D.C. Superior Court, more than 200 people were arrested and 6 police officers injured. City officials tallied the damage from the rioting at about $100,000. What the court documents call malicious and violent acts, the anarchists see as a necessary way to draw attention to poverty, racism, educational inequality, and other problems. Because everybody who sees a storefront window being destroyed by a bunch of black-clad psychopaths, they always want to stop and ask them, hey, can you tell me the reasons why you've destroyed this storefront window?
We all know about your views on poverty.
Carrefour, who is one of them, says, quote, allowing inauguration to proceed as a peaceful unfolding does not reflect that this is not a peaceful country. There is no peace, he said, who would not say which inauguration protests he participated in and whether he knew if the violence would occur. Quote, we wanted to make it a cluster F, and we made it a cluster F.
Good job.
These are your associates. These are the anarchists who you're associated with.
Like I said, I just wish they would take more judicious targets. Right, like some people, I don't mind the bomb throwing as long as it's a government building.
Oh, well, that's not what they're doing.
I know.
It's not what they're interested in.
Some people came up with the term in the 19th century, and that anarchist tradition is a long tradition of many thinkers who've written countless pages and countless movements, countless labor movements, and anti-government movements over decades and decades of history. And the
people who
modern,
are destroying property don't come off as thinkers to me.
Well, they are. They typically are, from my experience, very well read. But
I'm sure they are. But my point is, they don't come off because you're not talking to them. They're just a group of black-clad people throwing things through windows and throwing dumpsters, setting them on fire, and doing all kinds of destructive acts. People aren't sitting there wondering, how well read are these chaps? Shall we sit down for a cup of tea and have it out about our ideas?
They're just wondering, where's my sniper rifle? That's what they're wondering.
Or where are the police, and why aren't they doing anything about this, or whatever.
And most of your guys' anarchist friends don't have any don't really have any lineage to any of the original movements call themselves anarchism, except for anarcho-capitalism, but that has a very tenuous root. I mean, capitalism itself is and I'm not going to trash capitalism on the show tonight. That's not really what I'm here to do, but it's inherently a very hierarchical system, and which, whether you like it or not, it's absolutely antithetical to the decades and decades of movements throughout the world that have called themselves anarchists. So I think that it's kind of doing a disservice to kind of equate the two.
What about the mutualists?
Free Market Penguin, thanks for the call tonight. I appreciate it, man. Yeah. Thanks for that. Toll-free number, 855-450-FREE, 855-450-3733. You can bring up what you want. This is Free Talk Live. Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. Hey, it's Free Talk Live. You can dial in toll-free and join us here on the live Sunday edition of the show. Our number is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. We also have an email list. Yes, I know, email's old, but you know what? It actually gets to where it's going to, unlike some of these social networking sites.
Yeah, the consultants still say build your email list.
Because you control it.
Right.
Go to our email list. You can go to freetalklive.com. There's an email sign-up box right there toward the center of the page near the top of the site. You'll see it at freetalklive.com. As we continue here, Ian, Richie, and Mark in the studio, let's go to more of your calls and thoughts. David is in New Mexico. And, David, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Yeah, imagine that. A guy named Zuckerberg wanting to control the behavior of everyone in the world.
Uh-oh.
I'm not sure what you're getting at.
Aren't you?
Well, I'm just commenting on what I heard while I was on hold. You're talking about Mark Zuckerberg wanting to control the world, basically. He wants regulations here in the U.S. and guaranteed he wants them elsewhere in the world. He's probably already gotten more regulations other places in the world than he's gotten here in the United States that he's wanted.
Well, call me a Pollyanna on this one. I don't think Zuckerberg actually wants this regulation. I think somebody got to him and said,
"Really?
Look, Mark, this will benefit us because we are the market maker in this particular sphere."
The consultants.
If he wanted regulation, he would have been advocating for regulation for some time now. He's only recently come out in favor of it. And he realizes, A, regulation's coming. B, do I want to be in charge of writing that regulation or don't I? And if he wants to be, then, fight it as long as you want. But this is what happened with Amazon, too. Amazon was against, I think it was the sales tax thing until they were for it, at which point, they get to say or whatever.
At one time, it was too difficult for them to monitor the sales tax in every place they shipped until they became big enough to actually make that feasible. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, yeah, we can do it now. So now block everybody else.
Right. Well, we the peons really never know what they're doing or what they want. Whether they're being straight or they're playing us. And every science fiction writer that's ever lived and has wrote on all of these subjects repeatedly. And they didn't do it just to entertain us. They did it to be able to speak out on what they saw going on or they speculated was going on, without being exercised from society by saying it straight out. The only way they were allowed to say it and get away with it and make money off of it at the same time was to create the science fiction that they've created, saying all these things that we're now saying straight out.
You're talking about dystopian novels like 1984, Brave New World, these sorts of things? Yeah.
Yeah, all of them. Yeah, all of those science fiction writers, almost every single one of them have, when they were writing some entertainment, it actually was, in reality, it was more nonfiction criticism that disguised as entertainment than it was anything else, and they were correct. So yeah, I don't know what, to answer your question. I don't know what Zuckerberg and all the rest of them are up to, because they don't call us up and tell us. And sometimes they act straight out because they didn't think in time to do double speak. When they think in time and they're on top of it, they don't speak straight out. They do double speak and manipulation. So who knows? So basically, you just need to assume that all of them are out to get you all of the time, and try to be one step ahead of them. Otherwise, they will get you.
Well, historically, they go against regulation while they're in a building phase until they get big enough, and then to maintain their market dominance, they can absorb the cost of regulation, and that keeps out
because they're big enough.
Because they're
to
big
do
enough.
that, to hire the attorneys or whatever. I think you might be right to that extent, Mark, to where Mark Zuckerberg didn't get into Facebook in 2007 or whenever it was that they first made it, demanding regulation or even thinking about it. He just wanted to make a product that attracted college students to this platform, and then it became something else, and then it became something else, and it became much larger. And then once you get big enough, the government starts sniffing around, right? As soon as you start making money, then the government's interested in you. Now he's getting called to these congressional hearings, and now he's got to talk to these people.
Congress critters, these shiftless politicians are calling this guy in all the time. He's got things he wants to do.
And disgruntled consumers and the whole delete Facebook movement.
And he's not a libertarian. He's a statist, right? So he dutifully shows up and he puts on his suit and he sits in front of these people and he gives the best answers that he can. And I think you're right. At some point they realize, well, we better be a part of this rather than try to array ourselves against it.
If he didn't go, it doesn't matter whether he's a principled voluntarist. If he didn't go, then the jobs of all his employees, the people he's actually responsible to, are now at risk by these politicians. So he has to go. He has to answer these questions.
No, he doesn't.
The politicians would be vindictive as well.
Sure, they would.
If he doesn't show up, then
Ian doesn't care about these people's lives.
No, politicians? No, I don't care about politicians.
No, I'm talking about the employees of Facebook. These people, they have children, they have lives, they have car payments, they have house payments, they love each other, and they do not give a flying flip at a rolling donut what you think about freedom. They don't care.
Not my problem.
Right. Well, that's how Zuckerberg feels about your definitions. Screw Ian. If he ever heard your name,
what definitions are we talking about
here? You being all worried about whether Mark Zuckerberg is principled for going.
Well, I'm not worried about anything.
Testifying in front of Congress.
I'm sorry. Did you think I was worried about something?
If I had to go testify in front of Congress in order to keep Free Talk Live afloat, I would.
I don't think anyone would fault you for that.
Yeah. I don't see why
I got better things to do than talk to a bunch of scum.
Well, really? When the cops come knock on the door, though, you'll go out and chit-chat with them, and give them all the information they need, and then they lock you up.
No, that's generally not true.
That happened.
The real question, Mark, is would you abuse your fellow citizens to keep your company afloat?
Look, I'm not even sitting in a position. I can't judge Zuckerberg because I'm not sitting in his position. I think he's wrong, and so I'll judge him in so much as that. But, he's just doing what every other company does. That doesn't make it, it doesn't make him fantastically evil. It just makes him normal.
It makes him typical.
Yeah.
Typical statist running a big company.
Well, it's also why activism doesn't pay and business does.
Right.
You can be principled and broke, or you can, compromise whatever principles you may have and become a billionaire.
And you made the argument that smaller is better.
Who made that argument?
Mark did unintentionally.
How so?
Inadvertently.
I tend to think that, but please, how so?
Because when the recurring theme seems to be as these small ventures discover success and get big, then there's all kinds of abuse created as a result of their existence in a large state, whereas smaller entities don't have that ability to abuse the general society like the large entities do. And also smaller companies don't seem to be just naturally abusive, whereas large entities, as soon as, just by virtue of being large, it seems like they become abusive.
It sure does seem that way. Yeah.
So eliminate the state, right? and the system of abuse, and the large companies will have to provide services to their customers just like the small companies do, because they can't rely on that heavy hand of government to protect them.
Right. The large companies would have to be more competitive because they wouldn't be enshrined in the law.
Yeah, and I don't think they would be able to survive that way. Or
be as large as they are.
The economy of scale at some point, reaches a second break-even point where, then it no longer makes sense to be quite so large.
We've seen the inefficiencies of large systems, and it's anybody that's worked for a big corporate giant has seen it in real life.
And Clear Channel was pretty efficient in the way that they ran. They basically let local radio stations operate autonomously.
Well, you can say they're efficient, but they went into bankruptcy within the last year.
I'm just saying.
So there is that.
For a period of time.
Well,
as did their main competitor,
They
Cumulus.
bought heavily during a time when you saw real estate appreciation occurring, and that had a lot to do with it.
They're also heavily regulated and not subject to any real serious competition. So I wouldn't call them efficient. There's more coming up, though. It's Free Talk Live. It's Free Talk Live. Moments remain. Enough time for you if you want to join us here. Our number is 855-450-FREE like freedom. It's 855-450-3733. We do have the Discord on-air call-in line rooms, and they're open and available to you over at discord.lrn.fm. Hop on into any one of those anytime you want, because they're open 24/7. I mean, you don't want to hop into the call-in rooms if we're not here, but you can hop into Discord anytime, and there's usually people hanging out in there talking about stuff. Go to discord.lrn.fm. It's one of the myriad of free features that you can find on our website. freetalklive.com is the main site for this show. It's Ian, Richie, Rich, and Mark in the studio here. And as I mentioned earlier, Rich, you've got your own show. And it's The Anarchist Experience.
At anarchistexperience.com.
It is a weekly program where you and your co-host.
Yep. He's back. So we were talking.
And he's from Hawaii, too?
He is from Missouri. Moved to Hawaii and has made that his home for now.
Gotcha. And what did you guys talk about this week? Do you remember? It was yesterday, right?
It was yesterday. Yeah. So we got into a little bit of, again, piracy in video games. Because I've been doing a lot of like retro gaming.
Yeah.
And I came across like a tweet where there was an emulator for the original Nintendo that's a really old emulator, and this guy like found the source code and released it into the wild.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of backlash from him from releasing the source code by the retro community, going like, you got to respect the original developer's intent, and he didn't want it released as open source. But
what's the original developer have to say about it?
I don't know. I didn't see that. But the entire retro community is based around like ROMs that are released into the wild that
illegally
violate all sorts of.
Right. For listeners that don't know, a ROM is essentially you take an old cartridge. If you got the right equipment, you can download from an old NES or Atari cartridge or something.
Sure.
Download the actual data from the game that's on that cartridge in digital form to a computer, and that way it's easy to just share that game to anybody who wants to download it and then load it up in their emulator.
Yep.
Now, that's not necessarily legal. But,
it's almost guaranteed not legal.
But you don't ever hear of any prosecutions on this in this area. I've never heard of it.
Right.
Anybody being prosecuted for this.
Yeah, I can't imagine that anybody's going to,
go on eBay right now and type in Super or SNES Classic or NES Classic, and you will see, I don't know if it's hundreds, it's certainly dozens of people who have taken these old ROMs from these old video game systems and loaded them up onto these essentially emulators.
Yeah.
And you can literally, for under $200 in most cases, get thousands of classic video games, more than you could ever play in your lifetime, more than you would ever want to play. Every game you could possibly think of that you might have enjoyed as a kid, they're there.
They have homebrew games.
They have stand-up console video games now.
Arcade cabinets, you mean?
Yeah, arcade cabinets, okay. And they'll have sort of a bunch of buttons set up, and they have on them thousands of
games,
classic games,
arcade
so
games.
You can play, the entire arcade and
in one machine,
like huge a huge arcade, the biggest arcade you were ever in as a kid. It's got all those machines and every game that came before it and after it.
It's incredible.
And
for nothing,
you can have that, and you can put that in the basement, in your man cave or whatever, in the size of
for a few $100 or something, right?
What,
maybe a few
3 feet
several hundred.
by a square meter, basically.
These things have been getting better over time. So you've been experimenting and tinkering with hardware and stuff
a little bit. I'm
saying?
starting to finally get into modding my own hardware. So I have a few projects that I'm in the middle of on that aspect. But it all comes down to the piracy of the actual games, because I'm not about to go and collect the entire
piracy. Is such a harsh word for sharing.
Sure. Well, yeah, I'll accept the word sharing. But we're on a general talk.
Nintendo would not agree, however.
They have a very bad history of coming down.
Yeah, they're one of the
IP.
worst. Nintendo actually sent, I think it was last year, I believe, they sent notices, cease and desist notices to all the major ROM sites out there on the internet and got them to pull down their ROMs, basically.
But guess who got them first? This guy.
Other people on the internet who've had them for years.
Right, they're at the Pirate Bay right now.
They're at the Pirate Bay. They're on other torrent sites, and there's still some ROM sites that didn't comply.
Yep.
I don't know what jurisdictions they're located in, but they're still out there. So anybody who is a determined Googler, can
eat that, Nintendo.
can figure it out.
You little switcher.
I just recently acquired in quotes the entire Dreamcast collection and the entire original PlayStation collection, because those are two of the projects that I'm working on.
I played Zelda back in, when would this have been?
The first one?
Yeah, it must have been 88 or 87.
Somewhere around there, 86.
Thereabouts.
Yep.
And loved the game. I tried to go back recently and play again, and I'm like, this is boring.
Same, huh?
And I left. I had previously played in 98.
What about Jack? Did you try getting Jack to play the original Zelda?
I do not need to encourage my son to play more video games.
Okay, fair enough.
We'll work on that later. But
see, and I fired it up this weekend, and I was playing Yar's Revenge and Joust on an old Atari 2600.
Good golden oldies.
Yep.
Yeah, and I played Final Fantasy VII on Steam. I bought that, and I never even finished it because it's this was really, really, really awesome.
Yeah.
20 years ago when I played it.
It's been 20 years, yeah.
It was, it was this awesome, awesome game, and then it's I'm just not into it.
It was super awesome for you too, because you'd just gotten out of prison at that time.
Look at those graphics; they're almost real.
You went in with the Nintendo Entertainment System.
It wasn't even mine. The only game that I ever owned. I kind of looked down on the Super Mario people. They were younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
They were a year younger than me. But I had a 2600 was the only game console I had owned prior to owning the PlayStation 1.
It's funny. We're kind of middle aged, right? 30s and 40s between the hosts here tonight, and here we are talking about video games on National Talk Radio. Right, these are conversations that are likely going to become more common in the future as the gaming audience ages and becomes. The early programmers from back in the days are probably in their 70s at this point.
I was stunned the day that Jason Ring brought in
Rink or Ring?
Rink, was it
our
Rink?
Former co-host?
Yeah, former co-host brought in the story about how this first video game had beaten a movie as far as sales go.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was a big deal when it occurred, and that must have been 2005.
Probably
we did
at least.
That. So, somebody could look it up, I'm sure, and find out that maybe it was even earlier than that. But
and since then, that trend has continued to where video games, there's more money spent on those total than blockbuster movies.
Right,
Hollywood movies.
There's a lot of voiceover work that goes into video games. Yeah. Obviously, the animation is extraordinarily expensive.
There's hundreds. If you watch the credits, if you beat a newer game, one of these what they call AAA titles,
is long.
They are
like 20 minutes of
credits with. As long as you would see on a movie with that many names at least.
Than a movie.
Can't be any longer than a Marvel movie. God, those things just keep on going and going.
I would put up the credit scene for Red Dead Redemption 2 up against a Marvel movie just for timing.
I haven't. Again, I don't. I'm not into these things anymore. I play. What are they? Just little phone games, mobile games.
Sure.
So
go ahead. I was just going to say I'm not against modern gaming. It's just right now, I've gotten into the retro scene a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
And I do think that, in my opinion, we've passed the golden age of gaming, only because as great as modern games look, it's one of those things that I don't think will last as well as the ROMs, simply because you have to attach it to servers and
a lot of modern games require an internet connection
and
just to be able to play them.
Yeah. And the old games don't. Like you have the emulators.
Put it in, turn it on.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah, I really didn't appreciate that. That's about when they lost me. When
you put the game in and it's like updating. You got to wait forever and then you can play the thing, right?
So I played Star Wars Battlefront and Battlefront 2, and they always wanted you to log on and do it against other people, and I'd considered the notion, but I just
way those 14-year-olds can pwn you.
Right,
because they're in there 7 hours a day.
Boom!
And there's nothing wrong with multiplayer games, but if you have to log on to the internet and download more software, which means
a lot of the servers get turned off over time.
So you lose the game.
Right. You've got the game, but you can't play it because the servers are off, and many of them, they don't give you the ability to spin up your own server.
Yep.
Back in the old days, when you had multiplayer games, you could always spin up your own server, and that would keep that game alive as long as anybody was willing to run a server for it. But as long as it's centrally controlled, if it's EA or whoever it is, it's like, well, we've just decided this game isn't really making any money anymore, so turn off the server. There goes your experience. There goes your $60 game that you
I mean, there's a lot of games.
Interesting.
A lot of games out there that have that you pay to sort of be better at and get these little golden nuggets or whatever that make your character
loot boxes.
Yeah, loot boxes to be more powerful. And then when they decide for whatever reason that the game's done, it's just that's it. Everything that you bought is gone.
Poof.
Yep.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
They keep the money.
It'll be interesting when this generation becomes the retro games, to see how well this will stack up against the
what
current.
will they call it though? Because like in music, for instance, they've got classic oldies, and,
sure,
and then there's like oldies, and of course a song becomes an oldie after 20 years. So when does a video game become retro, and what will you call
that
the
Limp
original
Bizkit?
retro game?
You're an oldie.
You know you're old when they're playing your music in the elevator.
Out of time for tonight. Back tomorrow. Join us online in the meantime over at freetalklive.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitch at twitch.lrn.fm.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring signs into the rally.
Walk with me.
Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey, who do you think you are? Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today.
You ain't going to make it.
Wait a minute.
Whoa. Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Why are you running from me?
Because you scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. You can order your copy of the Director's Cut DVD now at victimlesscrimespree.com.